Hello my friends, John LaRuffa here with another Straight Up Solo. In this episode, we're going to take a look at Voidfall. This big, massive game. I will show you how you play the game. I'm not going to teach it, but I'm going to show you what it looks like. Because it's an investment, right? It's an investment in time, it's an investment in money. I'll go through the solo aspect of the whole thing and give you a couple of turns, and then we'll come back and I'll tell you what I think about it. So, let's get started. Okay, and as usual, folks, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. And if you have, I do really appreciate that support. So this game it has a huge table presence, right? I'm going to focus the camera in on the main things you need to see, and then I'm just going to kind of flash in front some other things. So I have the Galactic box, and that was the one that was from the Kickstarter. And so off screen, I've got trays of the different things we use, like the victory points and the guild tiles and the defenses and other things. So those are off here. I also have this tray over here that carries more pieces with the void stuff and everything else. I have this over here with a bunch of ships in it that aren't in this game, actually, the way the technologies came out. And then I've got this over here. Okay, and then over here I've got the agendas, and these agendas are important for how you're going to score and do things in the game. I have my production wheel, I've got my points over here, I have my hand of cards. So this hand of cards is how you take your actions in this game, okay? Each card has 3 separate actions on them that have a cost. And in the standard way of playing these cards, you can take 2 out of the 3 actions per turn. But if you have trade tokens like I have over here, you can spend those trade tokens to take all 3 of them. And if you happen to have one of these agenda cards that I showed you earlier in your hand, for instance, if I had this one in my hand, and if I played the card from my hand that matched any of these 2 symbols right here, then I'd be able to play this as a special action also. So you can take up to 4 actions per turn. Now, what else do I have? Well, I've got this galactic board over here, which is essentially your player aid in fairly okay to read iconography. You can do it. They do, thankfully, give you this whole book full of exactly what all these icons mean. I am sure with more plays, they'll become more and more intuitive, but I have to keep this close and at the ready right now to know what the heck I'm doing. Up here is the technology offer, and you can see I have 2 of these technologies already in play. Actually, I have 1 in play. I started with 1, and then the Void board has claimed one of those technologies, and that'll count against me in my score. Now, in this area right here, this holds the 3 different tracks that you have. You've got a political track, an income track or economics track, and then like a population track. I don't know the specific names of those, but that's basically what you've got going on. And as you move these things over with various actions, you get bonuses, but as you cross over certain thresholds, that will give you the ability to unlock advanced technologies so you can get those. Sometimes you have to pay by returning fleet power over from this ready area to the inactive area. And then even when you go into this level 4 place, you're actually allowed in this again, everything I'm saying here is for solo / co-op. And for the most part, solo. I'm not even gonna talk about the competitive mode because it's just too confusing. I'll tell you about my thoughts on the competitive versus the solo and the rule book and everything else in a little bit. Anyway, if you end up getting up here, you can start putting some of these inactive fleet power into these areas, which are like in-game bonuses for focusing on more of an economy style strategy than a conquer or a warlike strategy. All right, so the other thing you have is this obvious main galactic area. This is the galactic board, but this is your sector, okay? The solar system or the galaxy or however you want to look at it. Each of these are sectors. Each of these are adjacent to each other unless there is this void storm in the way, and that means it blocks adjacency and you have to go around it. There's nothing you can do to go through those void storm areas. You can also see that anything basically with orange is bad. right? That's all the void stuff. So you've got these figurines that are bad. You've got these ships that are bad. You've got corruption that's bad. You've got these cards that are coming out here that are bad. And so it's very color coordinated. Orange is bad, okay? Now, the other thing you have in the solo is this board over here. This is the crisis board. And every turn, you're gonna flip over one of these cards from the crisis deck, the current crisis deck, and that is gonna tell you whether you're gonna draw, the alert deck, that's gonna tell you whether you're gonna draw from crisis deck number 1, number 2, or number 3. And the distribution of how that goes depends on your level of difficulty. So I'm playing on easy mode right now. And so I've already played through all of cycle number 1, and I'm starting cycle number 2 so that you can actually see what that looks like. So lots of stuff going on, okay? Now, at its heart, this is a Euro/4X style sort of game, but it's very Euro-like. There is no randomness. There is no luck besides these cards coming up. That gives you variety, so it's not just ridiculous. But there's no dice rolling in any of this. Even though they're using dice for population, all the combat is completely deterministic, and it's determined by this flow chart right here. So you can figure out whether you're going to win or lose a battle before you go into it. You're actually supposed to do that. And it's not really like mathing it out as much as you can see at a glance, yes, I'm going to do this, not at a glance, but without too much effort, yes, I'm going to be able to win, or no, I'm not going to be able to win, I'm going to lose. And if I pull back on certain systems, what is the Voidborn going to do to me when I do that? All right, so that is a good overview. Now, let me show you basically how the game works. The first thing that's going to happen is you're going to go through the A phase over here, which is kind of a refresh phase where you get the game ready to play. You're going through the B, or the focus phase, where you're actually going to be playing your cards and doing the actions. And then you go through a C phase, which is the evaluation phase, okay? So theoretically, you could follow all these steps on this board to know exactly what to do. That is easier said than done. It's going to take you some time, and that's why having the rule book handy is really important. Now, they lay out the rule book in a unique way, and I know why they try to do this, and for the most part, I think it works, but there are the always use rules, which are just by themselves. There are the rules that are circumstantial. There are the rules that take place in only the second cycle. There are the rules that are for co-op or solo only, and then there are the rules that are for competitive only. I'm not sure I love how that works, but it's okay. And I'll say this, there is a different way to do that. There was the way that that Space Corp did it, where you had one rule book that was for solo or competitive, and you had one rule, solo or co-op, really just solo. And then you had one rule book for competitive mode. And they were identical in many ways, but you knew if I'm playing the game this way, it's all here. If I'm playing the game this way, it's all here. You didn't have to like skip over stuff or whatever. Again, it's not the end of the world the way they did it. It just took me some sussing out to try to figure out what I'm supposed to read and where I'm supposed to do that. And that was partially because of the tutorial. They try to walk you into things, and that's not bad, but it led to a little bit of confusion on my part. So this is not the tutorial. This is the first mission in the game. Let's go ahead and show you what it looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow these steps to prepare us to play. And then we're going to play a couple turns. Then I'll talk about the crisis. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because that would take a long time. But the first thing you're going to do is you're going to refresh the heroic actions. And these are special actions that you could do that cost more but are better than the actions that you have in this deck. So for instance, I've got this innovation card. If I wanted to play the heroic innovation card, I would discard this one, but then I would use this card in its place. And the actions are just generally more powerful, but they can be more expensive, okay? These are once and done. When you use them, they're out of the game forever. They don't come back in. And if you don't use them this round, they never come back in, all right? So we've set those up. Now we set up the alert deck. So the alert deck over here, these are ones that I've already previously used. You basically combine back in, these basically, they show 1, 2, and 3. So based on this card up here, I have to build my alert deck that's going to have 3 1 alerts in them, 2 level 2 alerts, and no level 3, but a single war card. Whoops. And so you're supposed to randomly take one of these war cards, and honestly, I don't know what they really mean. So as far as what's the symbols on them, so I'm just going to draw them and not worry about seeing this other one. I'll just turn it over for sake. And then what you do is you take this and you shuffle it. And so these should have the amount we saw here, plus there should be 1 left over from the previous alert cycle that didn't get drawn. So there was a level 1 there. All right. Okay, so that sets up your alert deck, and that's going to be important because this alert deck is going to be how you are dealing with crises as they come up. And that is the main driver for moving forward the solo game, is this board and the penalties therein and what it has you do. So we've set that up. All right, so that's complete. Now we are going to take away this trade token down here. And the reason you're taking it away is because it unlocks better trade token bonuses throughout the game. So that's what this one said. All right. And then we are going to, and I don't know what that icon means. And that's the thing. I don't want to lead us astray or miss a step. So that's where you have to really have this handy. I don't think I missed anything. We did the shuffle, we did the alert, replace a token on one of the tracks. That's right, as indicated on the difficulty setup aid. So there was no Harbinger listed. So I guess I don't have to put it down. That's what that says, Harbinger, or maybe a war. So there's nothing there. There's probably something there when you play it on medium or challenging. And then the other thing, let's see, just want to make sure I didn't miss anything there. So that, and then note this happens in cycle 2 and 3. Yes. Oh yeah, on medium difficulty. Yep. Okay. We've done everything that we're supposed to do then. Okay. Good enough. So we did that right. All right. Now we've done the trade token. Now it comes to number 2, which was unlock the bonuses. So now, I'm sorry, the advanced technologies. We've unlocked those. We don't ever worry about player order. And then we draw our next situation card coming from cycle number 2. So this was our situation from number 1, or event card, I guess it would be. And here's number 2. Now this thing is going to drive us in lots of different ways. First of all, rally the guilds. So all players are going to do this, all of it or none of it. All players do this, all of it or none of it. And then you could do this if you meet the conditions. This tells you what you're going to score at the end of the turn, and this tells you how many turns you're going to take in this cycle. So it says, add a corruption if able, otherwise add a corruption anywhere. So it wants me to put a corruption first on one of my territories, and the only ones you can do it on are ones that are eligible. Your home territory is never able to be corrupted. So I'm going to go ahead and put it over here on this one. Now, what does the corruption do? I'll tell you about that in a little bit. Then it says, place one of these tokens here and one of these defensive sentry tokens, not sentry, they're defensive tokens. Can't remember what they're really called, but on one adjacent Voidborn section. So I've got to kind of beef up a Voidborn section here, making it more difficult to attack. And I'm probably going to do that one right here because it's sort of in the midst of things. Then players with 6 or more guilds in uncorrupted places, which I don't have now because this was corrupted on me. So I don't have more than 6. I could get a trade token and the remaining players just get one of these little bonuses. So that would have been cool to get a trade token, but I did not do it. So this, I flip it over and it says either get a point or get some bonus resources, and I will take the bonus resources. I'll take 1 energy and I'll take 1 of these materials. All right. Now we have effectively done what's on this card. So now, how do I score points in this game? What the heck am I supposed to be doing? Well, the scoring conditions are over here. So this says, for instance, I can either score this top or this bottom. If I have 1 or less corruption anywhere, I would get 8 points. If I have, I don't know what the top one means, I'd have to look that up. It's your preferred, basically it means your preferred focus is equal to something, and I got to look at what that corresponds to. I could gain the 8 points there too. So I have to see what that is all about. All right, so that's one way. But then there's these standard scoring conditions that you have from the beginning of the game, where I score 3 points for every uncorrupted sector that I have. I would score 1 point for every sector that has at least one of these defensive tiles in it that isn't corrupted. And I'd score 2 points for each sector that I have that's not corrupted that has one of these shipyards in it. And the more I have, the more I score. Then you have these agendas, and these agendas, like I said, come from this area right here, and they allow you to score for other categories. So lots of different things, you know, economics, military, your guilds, your population, etc. Those tracks. So the one that I have over here was for my economic side. It says 4 points if I have at least 4 technologies in play. Well, I have 2. And then 5 points for each sector that I have, for each pair of sectors that I have that is not corrupted. And the choice of which you get in this game strategically fits the way that you want to put your strategy together. So how you choose these and which ones you get is a big focus of that. All right, so that is what you're trying to do. Now, let me go demonstrate a couple of these regular turns so you can see, well, what in the world am I doing in this game? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw that alert card. The alert card comes out, it's a level 1. So my level 1 alert card, right here I draw it. And this card is going to tell me that I have to do something, and if I don't do this condition right here, then I either suffer this consequence or it goes into my area here, making my end of the full round worse, depending on what type it is. Or I can just discard it and toss down one of these crises tokens. And if you put down 4, so there are only 3, if you put down your 4th one, you automatically lose the game, it's over. If you do put one down though, you do actually get some benefits. So it all depends. Now, what is it saying? It says, after I play a technology, choose also to play a Voidborn fleet power on an adjacent Voidborn sector. And if I do that, I could ignore this. So basically it's saying you want to build a technology in your area. And if you do, you can beef up the strength of one of these fleets. And if you do that, then you can discard this or satisfy the situation. If you don't, then this one being either a military or an economic can go to either of these spots. And as these spots fill up, they become more and more punitive throughout the round. And if you start pushing cards off there, then you're going to start putting crisis tokens on, and that's not good. Because if you do that, then you're in real trouble. You could lose the game. All right, so I know what I need to do. Now, how do I do it? Well, like I said, you have 9 cards to play with, each with 3 actions on them for a total of 27 actions. And in this cycle, you're going to play 5 of those cards. Okay, once you play it, you put it in the discard. And they do all sorts of different things, as you can see here. There's a lot of different icons on here. There's a lot to contemplate. That's a lot of good stuff, too. There's a lot of fun things to think about. But there's a lot going on. And so what I know is I'm going to be able to satisfy that thing right now if I can deal with getting some technology. Well, how do I do that? Well, I can get technology by playing the progress card. Okay, well, let's see. I could play progress. I could also use that progress card to help uncorrupt some things. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just play the progress card. And I don't have a trade token, so I'm only going to be able to play 2 of these actions. The actions I want to take are invent. So let me invent. It costs, now this is the production wheel. This amount of production is a function of the total population times the guilds that are in my control. In this case, I have these 3 here. This 5 doesn't equal 5 over there. That's a level 5, but in this case, it's 3, production and research. And as you can see here, this is like my storehouse. You can only store a limited amount of stuff. If you overproduce, that's one way to get some of these places, these bonuses. So I'm gonna spend 2 research tokens, or 2 research in my stock, to invent a technology. Now, what should I invent? Well, I probably wanna look at something that is going to help me improve my guild powers. And I'm going to do that because I'm focusing a little bit more on the economic side, I think, in this game versus the conquest. I'm just gonna try that out. So Cybernetic says, when you gain a guild, which is what that little thing is, you may gain 2 resources matching in that guild. And when I put it down, I immediately get to play one. So that's cool. I'm gonna put that in here. I immediately get 4 points, and 4 points are on this tracker right there. So we move up to 37. And then I can immediately play any guild I want in an open spot that I control. And I just happen to have one right here. Now, the question is which one? And that's a tough thing to make decisions on, but I'm going to not beat around the bush. I'm going to do it in food because I have a decent amount of overhead and upkeep, and I don't want to lose points for that. So because it's 2 times another one of these, I will upgrade my food production from 5 to 7, effectively going from 3 production to 4 production now on the card. All right, now, remember this condition, I can also choose to add a fleet power to one of those guys that's adjacent. Well, I did it over here. This one's adjacent. I'm gonna go ahead and add it over here because I don't need any further beefing up over there right now. Because I've done this, I've satisfied this condition, I can go ahead and discard it, and I don't have to worry about it coming there at the end of the round. So that was action number 1. Pardon me. That was action number 1. Action number 2, I want to get rid of that corruption. So I'm going to, it says this particular thing is a little punitive, but it's worth it, I think, in this case, where I'm going to actually deactivate one of my fleet powers here to pull it down. And then this will get rid of this corruption. And the reason I want to do that is because the less corruption I have out there, the more I can score different things here. It makes it more possible for me to do better things. Most of the time, corruption just puts the brakes on everything, okay? So I've done that, and then that is my 2 things on this card. I can't do the 3rd one because I didn't have a trade token. So there we go. That action is then complete. So I've done steps 0, 1, and I didn't have anything for 2. Well, 1 and 2. I completed that. I did the condition. Then you do this little cleanup. What the cleanup means is you can only have a maximum of 4 of these conquest tiles over here. You can only have a maximum of 2 full fleets over here. Otherwise, you have to consolidate or discard or bring back. If I had played one of these agendas, I'd have to find a spot for it in my agenda section, and I can't have 2 matching agendas of the same type. So you couldn't have like 2 economic or 2 military or something like that. And if I had taken a trade token, I have to find a place for it, which is where this one's sitting right here. Now I said I didn't have a trade token. I did have one, but I don't want, when I was talking about this card, I didn't want to use that because I'm gonna be really swamped with too much challenges if I start to give away, because I've got a lot of upkeep. Any spot that shows something in that spot over there means I have to pay 1 food at the end of the turn, end of the cycle. And if I don't do that, I lose 3 points. And there's also ways to pay it in energy and in materials, but I'm a little shy on those right now too. All right, so that was my full turn there. Now, if I had not satisfied the condition of that card, I would have had to decide whether I was going to play it over here, top or bottom, whether I was going to take the penalty. In this case, the penalty would be to choose the choose one of these conditions here, one or the other, or to discard it and put down one of these crisis tokens. But if I did that, I would at least get 5 resources, or I'd remove a corruption, so that can kind of be helpful. So that is the feel of the game. That was 1 turn. Again, I have 5 more of those to do. This video is running long, so I'm not going to show any more. But needless to say, they're actions that do all sorts of different things. There's 27 different ones of them, okay? Now, I will talk to you about how combat works. Let's pretend that I did a combat action. And the way that works is you do like an invasion, okay? And to do that, you can take all the ships that are adjacent to one place and mass them together. Now, when you do that, you go through the situation. So I'm going to simulate I'm doing it here. Let's pretend I brought these two in like this, okay? That would be 3 fleet power to his 2, but he has a sentry. And since I approach with the sentry, he does 1 damage to me right away. So that means he's going to knock out one of my blue cubes, fleet powers, and put it back into this spot right here. If I happen to have a sentry unit, I could have absorbed, I could have, that's only for defense, pardon me. So that doesn't do anything for the absorption. But there are ways, shields, other techs, or other different things from a technology standpoint that might, or a ship standpoint that might help with that. But as it is, I would lose that 1. Then what you do is you look at other things. Well, I have a torpedo, so I could do like a first strike with my torpedo and knock him down by 1 and drop his fleet power. And then I could go ahead and I could attack him again because I would have 2 blue cubes to his 1, and I would take the first strike, it would kill him, and he wouldn't be able to attack back. However, the reason I'm not doing all this for real is because if I was to do that, I'd be abandoning both of these sectors, and that would immediately put these guys in there, and I would lose all that hard work and all that progress, and I'm not doing that. But I just wanted to show you that doing this combat step is really pretty simple. There's an approach attack, which has attack and defense. Sometimes you have either or none of that. Then you go through the salvo over and over until one side gets exhausted. And if you win, you take over the sector, you wipe out anything that's up top here, but you keep anything in the bottom. You will get this victory condition, this victory point token, and then you will get all of the points from over here, plus any spoils. But in this case, then I'd have to add this guy over here, further making it tougher for me to deal with the end game end of turn consequences. This would stay my population, it would become my population, but it would be corrupted. And so lots of good, but there's also, I'd be thinning out my fleet, I'd be dealing with other problems. And at the end of the round, what's going to happen is, or when there's a war card drawn, not necessarily at the end of the round, although it could, yeah, there'll be a skirmish too, but at the end of the round. But the whole thing is that at certain parts, they may pop up and attack where I'm the weakest. And if I spread myself out too much, I could lose a lot of that progress. Okay, now, after all of that, after all these steps, these 5 steps, what's going to happen is I'm going to basically resolve some of these these evaluation steps over here. And that's where I'm going to have to deal with the consequences of my choices over here. I'm going to have to fight a skirmish with some of the Voidborn. I'm going to be punished on the economic track if this is up too high. I'm going to lose resources. Then I have to pay upkeep. I have to if I meet a condition, if I've done really well and I've got a 6 population over here and it's not corrupted and they have all 3 guilds, basically if I've like maxed out one of these spots, I get to take an inactive fleet and I get to put it over here and score. Once I finish this, fill this up, I get to take one of these really powerful, nice actions, which can help me get rid of one of these tokens, for instance, out of the game, and that's helpful. And then finally, I'll go through and I'll score all the points here, as well as all the points I have down here. And that will take me through the entire second cycle. I do that one more time for a total of 3 cycles, and then the game's over. Now, at the very end of the game, I compare my score to all of these scores over here that evaluate the Voidborn and how I did. So I'm easy, it starts at 60, then I would add 30 for this if this is still in play, and that's a rift area. I'd add 20 for each of these that I did not finish. I'd add 20 more for every crisis token that's in play, 10 more for every one of these guys, the Harbingers, 5 more for every technology that the thing ate, 5 more for, I think it's all the unresolved crisis cards over here, 3 more for any one of these fallen houses that I didn't deal with, 2 more for any corruption that I have any place, and then 1 more for I think for each population that's still corrupted. I take all that added together and see if I beat that score. And if I beat that score, I win. And if I don't, I lose. Phew, lots going on here. Thanks for hanging with it. I hope that it gave you a flavor of what we're doing. It is a very complex and very expansive game, but let me tell you now what I think about it. Whoops, pardon me for banging the table. So, what do I think of Voidborn? Well, let me hit the negatives first, because there's way more positives than there are negatives. And I will say that I absolutely love this game, but there are some negatives here that I want to address first and foremost. Number one, I realized the designers had a very big, tall task of trying to teach this game in the most effective way possible. And for that, I really do appreciate their kind of tutorial section and them trying to work in how would I get these people to digest this very meaty game and then be able to learn it and play it. The only issue I have is the way the rule book is set out, because they say ignore this, even if you're playing solo, ignore all this stuff, don't read these sections, skip this section, go back to this, don't read that, and then when you finish cycle 1, then read all this other jazz. I understand the spirit of what they're doing, but for me it was more confusing than if I just read the whole rule book, top or front to back, and then I would have done the tutorial and realized I could ignore many of these things. That would have been that's my recommendation for anybody, especially if you're one of those people who comes up against something you don't understand and then goes and tries to find clarification. Because there was a lot that I didn't understand because of my bumblingness of how I was trying to exclude and not exclude. I'm not necessarily blaming anybody by myself on that, but I would say I thought that there was a more elegant way to do that, and I would say the tutorial scenarios that they give and how to play and learn some of the GMT games. And this game in a lot of ways is at that level. Like for instance, Atlantic Chase, how that game, if you've ever played it, taught you how to play the rules. That was much more effective because it had everything you needed in that scenario right there and there. There wasn't any exclusion, this or that, but it also told you which pages to read so that you could understand it. And then it actually printed out what you were going to do. So in this game, they have you play through the tutorial, but they don't have it demonstrated as far as what would happen. I think honestly, the easier thing for me to learn this game would have been if I had a tutorial that I could follow along with, but I could also just read, and it would show me picture by picture how to do things. Because the game assumes that you are going to play competitive at first. And I don't know, I can't imagine sitting down with other people, busting out the rule book, and trying to do this from a competitive standpoint. We're all kind of reading through these. I can't. But of course, this is a solo mode or solo channel, pardon me. So maybe people can, but that's not how I've ever taught a game ever in my life. I always read the whole thing. I always play the whole thing at least once somehow, and then I teach the whole thing. It would be really difficult to do that where collectively as a competitive group, we read a few pages, then we go to play. We read a few more pages. That would be a game night in and of itself. And I guess would have done it differently. So if you're going to go through this, my recommendation would be if you are like me and you get tripped up on things, you may just want to read the rules front to back first, then go through the tutorial and do what it says and everything else. That would have made it a little bit easier. I ended up doing that after a while. I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm just going to read the whole thing. And then once I did, it was very helpful. Also, special huge thanks to Paul Grogan in his overview video of teaching the competitive mode. That really helped me understand what was going on. I know it was an hour long. That's a lot, but it was much needed and very helpful. So thank you, Paul. All right, number 2, there is no glossary in any of the rule books. So in order to find something, you have to thumb through it over and over and over again. That isn't the end of the world because luckily the sections are labeled so well and there's so many pictures and there's so much boldness and everything else, it kind of jumps out at you what you're looking for. I don't have a hard time finding what I'm looking for, but a glossary would have been helpful. Number 3, the overall interweaving of the different rules into things was difficult for me. I already mentioned that. I'd rather have a straight rule book that has every rule I need for solo or co-op and every rule I need for competitive. And it says, read this book if you want this, read this book if you want that. Don't intertwine And really, I know why they marked those other sections to be able to ignore, and that's fine. I just stopped doing it because I felt like I was missing out on certain things that I were questioning, and maybe I'm just too, I don't know, too curious about what is this, what do I do, how do it? I should have maybe just like blindly gone through, and that would have been easier. Okay, so that's all of the bad things I have to say. Everything else is fantastic. The art, the choices. It's a big sandbox game, right? If you don't like sandbox games where you're literally picking not only your strategy, but how you're going to score and how you're going to put things together and how you're going to maximize your turns and the combos and everything else. If you like things a little bit more hemmed in, this is not the game for you. If you struggle with AP, you're going to struggle mightily here. But I really felt like this game really, in a lot of ways, I felt like I was playing like a Lacerda title almost, because not just because of the artwork, because Ian O'Toole did it, although that's probably subconsciously what got me thinking about it. But it really felt like a game like that where you have all of these different choices and interacting things that you could do. The one difference is that this was not a procedural game, unlike Lacerda games where you have lots of procedures to do a specific thing. These were short, concise, little actions, which was cool. It was good, but it was so very much sandboxy and so intertwined and interconnected. It really had that feel to me of being more like a heavy Lacerda than anything else. I think it's a fantastic, there's just so many scenarios to explore. There's so much content. There's randomization in the scenarios based on the way that the technologies come out with the houses, how you set things up, how the alert cards will draw different conditions. I would agree with them. They put this right at the beginning of the rulebook that says this game has almost infinite replayability, and I would say yes, there's so much here. Even though, and at first I looked at it and I said, oh, that's kind of too bad. There's so many more competitive scenarios than there are solo. I don't think that's going to matter to me one bit. I think that I'm going to find certain solo scenarios that meet my liking, that kind of give me the right kind of blend of complexity and intricacy and they even rate them to help you figure that out. And I'm going to probably play a couple of those and be happy with it, because I mean, there could have been none of that. It could have just been one scenario and that's it. And that there are 7 solo ones. So that's fantastic. Even though there's a lot more competitive ones, I wouldn't let that dismay, cause any case for dismay for you who are just going to play it solo. Overall, the amount of control you have in this game is amazing. The fact that there is deterministic combat, that you choose what to do when and how to do it, where to focus your energy and how to spend your resources, and those things all have ramifications, but can really be done in a smart and very clever way. I think it's just fantastic. It's very novel. It's new to me, even though I said it feels like a Lacerda. It's a new feel, and it is so rare for me to get a new feel out of games these days. But this one just had it. It had it, and that's such an exciting thing when you've been playing board games for so long, been playing solo games for so long, to find something fresh and new. So I'm loving this game a lot, but it is not going to be for everybody. I think you have to be committed. I think you have to make sure that you're going to spend 4 hours or so learning it. The first time you set this thing up is also a bear, right? I've done a little short on that. It took me a solid 2 hours to try to set up that first scenario. I was getting caught in a lot of things too. I was accidentally intertwining things, but even after now I know, it's still a 45-minute setup time, probably minimally, unless you really have it all memorized. And maybe it's a half hour when you have it all memorized. But this is an investment game, right? This is a huge brain burner. And so if you don't want that, or you're worried about it, or you suffer from AP, or you don't have enough time to devote to something like this, then you're going to probably want to be cautious on if you want to invest in it. I'd say, and I've only played, the beginning scenarios and such, but you're probably looking at a 2.5 hour play time here, because the choices are so hard. They are so complex. I shouldn't say complex. The actions are discrete and simple, but there's just so many. Like I said, there's 27 actions you have on those cards, on those 9 cards. Not to mention that you have beefed up ones on the game table in front of you, and you have ones that you could take if you pull those agenda cards. There's a lot to think about. which I love, but you might not. So hopefully this has been helpful to you to figure out, do you need to shell out for it or not? The upgraded components versus the standard, like you saw the Galactic box is what I have. I don't know the retail except for what it shows in there. I'm not sure, unless you really want the minis and everything else, that you need all those things, but I also don't know if you, with the retail, does it not have the organizational trays and everything else, because that is very helpful in keeping it all organized. The one thing, this is going to be one of those very few games that I do not sleeve the cards in, but I don't know exactly how I would fit all the cards back in if I sleeve them. It looks like things are set up to be just where they need to be in that regard. So probably not going to sleeve this, which is a very big rarity for me. Although I also know I'm never going to sell this game because this thing is amazing. Anyway, I hope that was very much a helpful video for you. Thank you so much for sticking with me in it. I know it was longer, but I appreciate it. And whatever you decide to play in the future, I really hope you have a fantastic time doing it. Take it easy, everybody.